southwest. Let's David Speers with us on our count on Saturday evening. Bruce, good to see you, and I just want to get an update from you, your thoughts on how the count is looking this afternoon. As we mentioned earlier, we might bring this up again. What we know so far in terms of the seat count, we've got 5 on the crossbench, 10 seats still undecided, and the two major parties, two major sides of politics anyway, pretty much neck and neck, 68, 67. What do you think about those 10 seats that are still too close to call? Are more of them going to break one way in your view?
Well, it's exciting, isn't it? There's never been a more exciting time to be an Australian, in fact, David. Look, I've been talking to party officials this afternoon, and they're confidently saying that Labor has 68 seats, by the way. And in that 68, they're including Lindsay, Longman and Flynn. So that's encouraging for Labor. That puts it up 1 on the numbers that you've got there. And then they're very confident about Herbert, where they think we're 1,000 ahead. Cowan, I spoke to the party secretary there, where we're about 900 up. And Capricornia, where we're also 900 up. So on those numbers, Labor could get to 71 seats. Then it gets a little bit...
If it gets all those 3.
If it gets those 3. Now, on top of that, there's the possibility that they'll pick up the seat of Hindmarsh in South Australia. Yeah. That's the seat where Steve Georgianis used to be the member. He's a high-profile member of the Greek community there. And we think that there will be a good swag of postal votes coming in for him from not only the Greek community, but generally. Labor's 470 votes ahead there. So that's sort of where the good news is. Where it gets a little bit less hopeful is that they're only 66 ahead in Chisholm. And, of course, that was in the Labor column. And so if we lose Chisholm, then
it's trending back to
you're going back the wrong way. And then you've got Ford, Gilmore and Dunkley, where Labor is basically behind. So what does all that mean? It means that if Labor gets to 71, as we expect they will, then you are definitely in hung parliament territory. But there would be a high likelihood if those other seats go to the Liberals and they get 74, that Turnbull would be able to rely on Katter and probably Cathy McGowan to get to 76 without first having to go to Xenophon.
So the likelihood, from what you're saying, the best case, looking at things realistically now for Labor, is probably 71 seats.
Or 70, is that well, that's not the best they can do, but 71 looks pretty likely. They could get up to 73 if things go really well for them. But 71, 72 looks to be much more likely. And we're talking about, you know, literally a couple of hundred seats here. That's
and best case then would be, and best case would be 73. That would leave the coalition on 72, and
then having to rely.
Well, Nick Xenophon, having to roll. And then Nick Xenophon, he has made an interesting comment about the party that has which side has the most seats, him being inclined towards them. What do you think? Is that? If Labor can get to 73, that obviously makes it very interesting.
Well, that'd be a great result then for Labor, because if he was able to come through with that commitment, then that would put Labor on 75, and then, of course, you'd have the Green band.
I mean, it is technically possible, obviously, to get there for a Labor minority government, but, Bruce, to be honest, it's more likely, isn't it?
It's a stretch.
Forms of minority government.
Yeah, it's a stretch, particularly with Chisholm looking like it may go the other way. If that were the case, then I think it becomes much harder for Labor, because we've lost a seat then. And you have to make up an extra seat on top of that to get back into the game. So my best guess right now is probably 71, possibly 72. If we get to 73, it's really interesting, but unlikely.
All right. Well, let me ask you the big picture question here, Bruce, because we've also seen a very high vote, obviously, for Nick Xenophon, but Pauline Hanson as well. We heard George Brandis this afternoon reflecting on this. I mean, we're talking about 140,000 plus votes that she's won, and we'll see how many Senate positions that ends up translating into. There is a message there, isn't there? And it's to both sides of politics. It's to the political class. What do you think the message is?
Well, stop ignoring us. Take us much more seriously. Look out for us when it comes to job creation, particularly jobs in Australia, which were traditionally performed by Australians. So with that group, particularly the Hanson supporters, you really are talking about the sort of people who were very activated and motivated around the Brexit issue, and a lot of people in the United States who feel that jobs are going overseas there that should be staying, and of course people like Trump are exploiting that. But that's not an unreasonable proposition, generally speaking. I mean, we should be looking after people in Australia and creating jobs in Australia for Australians. It just gets increasingly more difficult in the sort of world in which we live now, where we have free trade agreements and free trade is very much part and parcel of the way in which the world operates. There is a reaction against that. And both of the major parties are seeing it. And when you have a Prime Minister who looks like he's not really representing the interests of the conservative people that would normally vote for One Nation, you see a big jump in that vote.
Yeah, well, what about for Malcolm Turnbull? I mean, if he does manage to scrape there, either getting to 76 on his own or relying on Bob Katter, Cathy McGowan, maybe in a minority government, how long is that going to last, do you think? Do you see this parliament lasting 3 years, or do you reckon we'll be back to the polls sooner rather than later?
Well, I'm an admirer of Katter, of course, and he typifies that everything that's made and built and produced in Australia is great sort of vote. Turnbull would have to really turn himself inside out to accommodate someone like Katter. And if he can't keep him on side, then it becomes a really difficult exercise. And I don't think the Xenophon candidates will be much more accommodating of Turnbull on that front. What does that all mean? It means they may limp on for 3 years if they do get to the 76 in the House. It also means that there's a prospect that somewhere down the line either the Governor-General calls on Bill Shorten to come and form a government, or there is another election. But as we saw with Julia Gillard, she managed to put together a working majority from a minority position in government, and that government lasted for the full 3 years from 2010 to 2013. Not a happy time, and I think whoever wins this election is going to be in a very difficult position, frankly, at the next election, because they'll struggle to get any sort of momentum.
And on the Labor side, Bruce, you might have seen it yesterday morning. People were on the phone to me pretty quick, wanting a contest if they lose and wanting Anthony Albanese to run. Bill Shorten this afternoon has tweeted pictures of his leadership team all looking very unified, and he's had a great result for Labor, no doubt about it. Wow. Will he have any risk, do you think, of facing a contest?
I don't think so. I mean, it's almost unthinkable, isn't it? I mean, when a fellow brings the party from the doldrums up to a position where we're talking about them possibly forming a government, the suggestion that there would be a contest is verging on laughable. And he has to be given credit for what he's done. I mean, this has been a fantastic effort by him, by his campaign director, George Wright, by Carla Murnane in New South Wales, by Patrick Gorman in Western Australia, all the state secretaries working together with a leader who's got a great team behind him in his own office and in the parliament. Now, it'll be nuts to change that arrangement, I'm sorry to say, and I think any serious discussion about that should be put to bed really quickly.
Yeah, well, certainly if they remain competitive in that seat count, as we see over the coming days and weeks, probably before we get a final number here. I'm sure that's right. Bruce Hawker, good to talk to you again. Thanks so much for that.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a quick break and then back with the last word.